guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor, and for today's video I am going through the top 20 books that I want to read in 2020. So this video is going to be kind of like a backlist TBR. There are a ton of books that are coming out in 2020 that I want to prioritize and I want to read, and I'm so excited. A lot of my favorite authors are coming out with books this year. But I wanted to make a video specifically for books that are backlist books that I've been meaning to get to for forever and just haven't yet. So I'm making a top 20 list of books that did not come out this year but that I want to read in 2020. I have them written down on my bullet journal, so it is official. This is a list, like a year-long TBR of backlist books that I want to read. Let's get into it because there are 20 books I want to talk about and I don't want to be here for an hour with you guys. So the first book that I want to read in 2020 is going to be House of Leaves by Mark Danielowski. This is a book I actually got Christmas of 2018, and it's a book that I've wanted to read since it came out, honestly. I've heard so many wonderful things about it. It is a mixed media, multi-format horror book about a house that looks a lot bigger or has like a different format on the inside as like the plans show, I believe. I don't know a lot about it. It's a very intimidating book. Not because, I mean, it is a little chunky, but because it's like mixed media format. So like a lot of times, honestly, like flipping through it, a lot of times it looks like a textbook, which it's just intimidating. But I've heard wonderful things about this. This is kind of like a cult horror classic, like it's sort of like a modern classic, and I just really want to pick it up. So hopefully 2020 is gonna be the year that I do that. Also, sorry the lighting's a little dim. I used natural lighting and it was a perfect day for filming until I actually sat down to film and then it started raining. So it's a little dark and that's why. But the second book that I want to read in 2020 is going to be The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I have heard amazing things about this one, and last year was really the year that I got back into fantasy. Fantasy used to be the genre that I read more than any other genre when I was a child. And I think I just got a little bit burnt out. And not only that, I think I didn't really have like the resources when I was a kid, or I mean, I probably did, but I didn't like utilize them to find like more diverse books and just a different variety of fantasy books other than what my very small school library had. Now that I'm older, I'm finding new voices, new authors, just new experiences. I've really been getting back into fantasy again, which is really refreshing. And I've heard great things about The Poppy War, and I'm very excited to pick it up. I also own The Dragon Republic. It's a signed copy. I haven't read it yet, so there's a lot of pressure for me internally just to read this, and hopefully I like it because I already have the first two books in the trilogy, so fingers crossed. The third book I want to get to in 2020 is going to be The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. Priory of the Orange Tree was one of my favorite books last year. I don't like give like exact rankings for my top favorite books of the year, but it was definitely in my top 5. And this is the first book in her series that came before Priory of the Orange Tree, which is a standalone fantasy. This looks like a fun futuristic series about clairvoyance, and I follow Samantha Shannon on Twitter, and I know like how much heart and soul goes into this. She does so much research into like the lore of this world and just like traveling a lot to try and really capture the essence of the places that are talked about in this series. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this series and hopefully maybe find a new, I don't know, would we call this fantasy or sci-fi, or I don't know what it is, but I'm excited to read it. The next book that I would like to pick up in 2020 is another book that, just because of the size of it, has been very intimidating to me to pick up, and that would be It by Stephen King. I have read this before. I did really love it when I read it, except for the one scene that's very infamous and probably could be cut out, and honestly, like Stephen King, like, let's do some reprints. Let's cut that out because otherwise this will be a fantastic book. Anyway, I really loved the It movies. I really loved the book before then, but I've only read it once because it's huge. I think that's a shame because I really remember like connecting with so many of the characters because I did read this when I was younger. I want to say in like 8th or 9th grade. And I just really connected to a bunch of these characters. So many characters in this book are like my favorite King characters, and some of them are my favorite characters, like, of all time, and I just want to reread this. I love character-driven books, and this is absolutely a character-driven book, which is why it's so chunky. I think there could have been less character development and made it a lot shorter. I love a good tome, so I'm not too concerned with that. It's just the very thought of just sitting down and prioritizing or committing to an over 1,000-page book is intimidating, but I want to reread it because I absolutely loved it. And I'm curious because I am like a much more aware reader now than I was when I was like a preteen. And so I'm wondering if my opinions on the book are going to change at all because it is pretty dated. So I'm interested to see if anything changes about my experience reading it. But I definitely want to pick it up again because I really love this franchise. And then the next book I want to read, and I really tried hard not to put like exclusively a lot of books from one author on this list, but this is another Stephen King, but it is the only other Stephen King. So because I know I'm going to read King this year, I just want to prioritize these two. And the next one is going to be 11/22/63. I really wanted to watch the Hulu original series. I think it's Hulu original. You can find it on Hulu. And I watched the first episode, and I was thinking there were some things that were different from the book, but I couldn't remember because, number one, it's been a while since I read this book. It came out in 2011, and that is when like I first picked this book up from the library, and I got a good way into it. Okay, honestly, yeah, like I think I got like halfway through this, and then I had to return it to the library. And then I just never picked it up. And I have like this big complicated relationship with historical fiction. I should love it. And I did love it a lot more as a child. I really love history. I minored in it in college. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I really enjoy nonfiction history and learning about historical events. Historical fiction, I don't know. I don't know if it's the types of historical fiction that are popular. Like, I really don't enjoy war stories at all. Unless it's a fictional war, because I don't mind war and fantasy. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. Like, historical fiction should be a genre that I love, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I got like halfway through it. I enjoyed it. I never finished it. This year's the year. I want to watch the miniseries, and I'm just one of those people. I'd really like to finish the book before watching the movie or series adaptation. The next book I'd like to read this year is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I have never really read Jay Kristoff. I've read Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, but there was not like a lot of traditional writing in that one. If you've read it, you know what I mean. So I haven't actually read his standalone work before, and I know the Nevernight series gets so much hype on YouTube. And I kind of wanted to start it this year, but then the third book was coming out this year, and I kind of just felt like if I hadn't started it before the third book came out, I might as well just wait until it comes out so that if I like it, I can just read all three of them back to back to back. So that is, I guess, what I've been waiting for. I feel like it would fit like the types of books I'm into. There's a badass main character. I think the first one has to do with like a school setting, which, you know, I feel like any child who grew up with Harry Potter in the Harry Potter generation, I feel like we all kind of have a soft spot for that type of location. So I've never watched a booktuber that has the same type of reading preferences that I do say that they hate the series, so I'm intrigued to see what I'll think of it. This next book, there'll be an image up obviously, but as I'm filming this, I kind of forget like the full title of it and who wrote it, but that's gonna be the book Quiet. It's a nonfiction book, and I put it on here because I requested the audiobook from Overdrive, and I have literally been on the wait list for almost a year now, and I'm gonna be getting to it in like, I think 5 weeks is when like my hold will be released to me, and I'm just so nervous that sometimes this happens when you request a book from Overdrive, at least it does for me. If there's such a long like wait in between when you request it and when it comes in, sometimes you're not really interested in like reading it anymore, or you forget why you requested it in the first place. So I don't want that to happen to me on this one because I've been waiting for such a long time. But this is essentially a nonfiction book about the power of introverts and kind of like scientifically gassing us up. I definitely think that a lot of structures in this world and traits that people consider more desirable than others are kind of stacked against introverts and people who are more quiet, who are more shy, who are more introverted. I know those aren't all the same thing. You understand where I'm getting at. So this book is kind of talking about the power of introverts. As someone who's very much resented in the past the fact that I am a very large introvert, and kind of felt like the traits that I am inherently born with are just not great, especially in terms of like people skills and like just interpersonal skills and the amount of time that like I want to spend with other people and that I thrive spending with other people. I just want to read a book that kind of glorifies that and kind of says, you know, hey, it's okay that you're born like this, and you have strengths too, because damn, I'm so jealous of extroverts. Truly jealous. 2020 is the year I am loving myself no matter what and accepting that I'm an introvert. I'm not gonna change. I'd like to read something that highlights it. The next book I have on this list is Middlegame by Seanan McGuire. This was Kayla from Books and Lala's favorite book of the year, so that put it on my radar, and then I think a bunch of other people have pledged for this to be either it was like one of their favorite books of the year or one of their most surprising books of the year, or just a book that they want to get to in 2020, and I am interested in the premise. I have read Every Hearted Doorway by Seanan McGuire, and I enjoyed it. It was okay. I prefer longer books rather than shorter books, so I have a feeling I might like this one a little bit more. And I've also read, she writes under Mira Grant, her more like horror stuff, and I really enjoy her work as that. So this kind of seems more on that side. It's a full-length novel, and it's got like some creepy, dark aspects, so I'm interested in reading it for those reasons. My next book I actually have a copy of, so my editing self is feeling pretty pleased right now. But that's gonna be Recursion by Blake Crouch. And this one is, I actually know a little bit of the synopsis for this one because I was very excited when it first came out in June of 2019. And I thought I'd read it in the month, and I never did. It's about a phenomenon called false memory syndrome, which is a mysterious affliction that drives its victims mad with memories of a life they've never lived. I read Dark Matter in 2018, I think. Might have been the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019. Regardless, I really enjoyed it. And it was very surprising for me because I honestly just saw it like on an end cap at my library, and I picked it up and read it and really enjoyed it. Book of the month had this as one of their picks, and I picked it up because his writing style is a very easy writing style to get into. I would almost compare his writing style to like a Transformers movie. It's not gonna be the most beautiful thing or the most poignant thing or the most impactful thing you've ever read, but it's going to grab you and entertain you from start to finish. And I think there's a lot of things to be said about a writer who can write something that very much feels like a movie as opposed to a book, and that's what I get when I read his book, because I've only read one book by him. So hopefully this is some of the same. I'd also heard from some people that this is kind of similar to Dark Matter in certain aspects, so you'll probably like this more if you space them out. So I think that's why I didn't want to read it last year, was that I was just giving myself time to recover from Dark Matter and have some more time so I'd enjoy this more. So yeah, that's Recursion. The next book that I want to read in 2020 is Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. Karen and Georgia from My Favorite Murder podcast. I'm a murderino. I love their podcast. I wanted to read their book when it first came out to support them, and just for one reason or another, never got around to it. But I really want to read this book in 2020, especially the audiobook. I just think that might be the way to go for this one, especially since I'm so used to hearing their voices in my head on my drive to work or, you know, cooking and clean. Like, I listen to My Favorite Murder all the time, so I think the audiobook is the way to go. And I am very excited because, you know, you do get glimpses into their life in the podcast, but I think it'll be really interesting to read something that is solely based on them, because they do seem like wonderful people. And yeah, so the next book that I want to read in 2020, I actually kind of posted on like my personal Instagram asking my friends and my family about what book that they read recently that really like changed like a perspective for them, or really just was very impactful for them, or, you know, book that really changed them in some way. So one of my very best friends in the world, she suggested Hillbilly Elegy. And I know this takes place in the Midwest. I am from the Midwest. So yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but I trust her reading taste. At least, I mean, I used to. We used to go to the library and have like reading dates all the time together when we were kids. I'm sure that if she likes this one, then I'll like it too. The next book is Trick Mirror. This book was one that my cousin said she really enjoyed and was really impactful. And I don't know anything about it, and I think I'm gonna keep it that way because I'm nervous, like, if I read some of these books and the synopsises don't sound like what I usually read, then like I'll probably push them off and not read them. Whereas if I know just like this is a book called Trick Mirror that my cousin really loves and thinks I will too, then I'm gonna pick it up and read it. I have zero idea what it's about, but I'm looking forward to reading it this year. The next book is the third book that I'm gonna be talking about like this. Someone that I love recommended it to me and I know nothing about it, so we'll see how that turns out for this year. But that would be Jitterbug Perfume, and my uncle recommended this one to me, and he said it made him feel like he had unlocked the key to immortality and felt like he could live forever. And I just thought that was such a poetic thing to say. Yeah, I really fell in love with the way he phrased that, so I am very excited to be picking this book up in 2020. The next book that I have on my list is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I was so excited for this book in 2019. I actually think I had it on my most anticipated 2019 releases. And I never got around to it, and that makes me really sad because I really want to read it. I know this is one that gets drastically different reviews based on who reads it, but I know Kayla from Books with Lala really enjoyed it, and I know Riley Marie from Riley Marie Reads really enjoyed it as well, and we tend to have very similar reading tastes to each other. So I figure I'm gonna like it. I know like the ending is what bothers people. You know, I read a lot of horror, and I feel like horror is a genre that tends to have very ambiguous endings and endings that sometimes can feel like a letdown. I found out last year that I do really enjoy body horror because it really squicks me out. I'm looking forward to reading this one. I know it's like YA, but I don't think it holds back any punches from what I remember, so I'm excited to read it. The next book I want to read is This Is How You Lose the Time War, and I believe this is Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads. It was one of their favorite books of the year, and I've just seen it going around on a lot of other lists like these. It's a love story written in letters, like going back and forth between two different agents that are like on different teams. I don't know. I don't really know a lot about it, but it sounds really wonderful. I've heard that the writing is really wonderful, and it just kind of sounds like a very character-driven story, which I am super into, so I'm really excited to pick this one up. The next book I want to read is another YA horror, which is kind of different for me. I haven't read a ton of YA horror, but I'm really intrigued about this one, and that is Rules for Vanishing. I know Alexandra Roselyn, she said this was one of her favorite books of the year, I believe. It was on her list, and then I think it was on Riley Marie's list as well of favorite books. So this was one that I had seen floating around. I had added it to like my want to read on Goodreads, but seeing like those two recommendations really made me kind of want to put it on this list and kind of prioritize it. The premise just sounds so interesting to me, and I just love the concept of like sister love and like bonds between sisters being like an important part of a story, because I believe this is one where her sister goes missing and the main character has to find her. So I really enjoy that trope, so I'm looking forward to this one. The 17th book that I want to read in 2020 is going to be Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. I don't know a lot about this book, but Night Film was one of my favorite books that I read in 2018. I've never read another book by Marisha Pessl, even though I really have wanted to. And I have really been enjoying lately dark academia books, and this is apparently one of those. So I'm excited to pick this one up. Yeah, I wanted to put this one on here just because of like the dark academia stuff, and also because Marisha Pessl has so many other books out. Not so many other, but like she has other books out, so I don't know why I've been waiting this long to pick up another one. So starting here with Special Topics for Calamity Physics. The next book that I want to read in 2020 is the Grey Seer, and this was actually another book that I had on my most anticipated books of 2019, and I never got around to it. I believe this is classified as YA, and it's a dystopian about girls who are kind of shunned from society for their Grey Seer, and it's kind of exploring, like, I believe puberty and sexuality and ways in which younger girls are kind of punished for something that is not their fault. Sounds like an engaging read. I really want to get to it in 2020 because I definitely want to get better about books that I say that I want to prioritize reading, like my most anticipated books of the year. I want to read them in the year that they're most anticipated. And then the second to last book is actually going to be The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I was very young when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and I fell in love. I was truly obsessed. I found out that they were based on books. Like that's how young I was. I think they came out in the early 2000s. I was in like first grade, second grade, third grade. So I found out that they were books, and I checked them out from my library again when the movies were coming out because I wanted to read them because I fell in love with the story. I know I checked them all out and I read them, but I definitely like skimmed my way through them because I mean I was like an advanced reader for my age, but I definitely just wasn't ready to handle J.R.R. Tolkien's writing style. I don't really remember anything about reading them. I'm pretty sure I definitely just skimmed through them, looking for scenes that I remembered from the movies so I could read them. I've read them technically, but I haven't actually read them because I don't like remember anything about the reading experience at all. So I want to reread it this year because I love The Lord of the Rings, and again, I feel like it's something that like I love the movies so much, and I've just been putting off like reading the books because obviously they're going to be different. And at 24, almost 25, I feel like I'm at an age where I can sit down and read the books, acknowledge that they're a ton different from the movies, something that my very young child self could not handle. But I feel like I'm old enough now to realize that the books and the movies are different entities and they'll have like kind of different tones, and that's okay. I'm ready to read at least The Fellowship of the Ring this year. Hopefully I can read all 3 books. And then the last book, I have touched on this in the past. I'm currently rereading the Harry Potter series. I have not done a full series reread of the series in such a long time. When I was a kid, I used to reread the series every single summer. But for someone who was still growing up, like while the books were coming out, the rereads were very, very different depending on the year. So definitely the older books, I know so much more. 1 through 4, I know so much more than 5 through 7. Because also in rereads in the past, when I've tried to reread them, I read 1 through 4 and then get to 5 and then I just quit because I don't like 5. This reread, there were a lot of things about Order of the Phoenix that I did love, and I definitely like it, I think, more as an adult than as a child. It's still my least favorite in the series. Anyway, that was a long tangent. So I'm rereading the series again, 1 through 7. I am currently about to pick up the 7th book today as I'm filming this because I've got a lot of cleaning to do and a lot of chores to do. And what better way to do that than listen to a Harry Potter book? So I'm gonna start 7, and then after I finish 7, I'd like to pick up this. And this is the very last book that I want to read in 2020. And that's Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. So this came out in 2016. I really wanted to read it, and then, you know, a lot more people who had more time than me because I was in college, in a really hard time in college during this time. I wasn't really prioritizing reading at the time whatsoever. And then everyone kind of read this before me, and everyone kind of, I feel like, has collectively decided that this is garbage. I don't know, leave a comment down below if you don't think it's garbage. I think most people have kind of dismissed this as not really canon. And I like kind of know some things that have come from it that I'm not a fan of, and I really feel like I'm gonna hate this, but I'm a completionist, so I need to read it. Just so I can actually say I read it and I hated it, as opposed to right now where it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I hate it, but I've never read it, so I want to read it. I found this last summer at Goodwill for $1. So I picked it up. After I read it, I will probably lose myself in HarryPotterFanfiction.net again, like the old days. I just want to read it and then be done with J.K. Rowling Potterverse things. The 8th story, 19 years later. Okay, I'm gonna read this, and I'm probably gonna hate it. And that's okay, you know, that's okay. This is a journey. I might actually make a full reading vlog on this because I think that would be fun, because I have a lot of thoughts about Harry Potter, apparently, seeing as how that last clip for that book took about like 10 minutes out of this video. Anyway, so there you have it. Those are 20 books that I want to prioritize in 2020. I'm hoping to make a follow-up video or sit down and kind of go through them at the end of this year and hopefully be able to say that I read 20 out of 20 of them. So that is going to be the end of this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe for more content from me, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!